Welcome back to Stinging Back, where we dig into the truth behind online sting operations and expose the reality that law enforcement and vigilante groups often ignore. Or, I should say, deliberately cover up. I'm M.
And I'm A. Today we're examining why online sting operations run by ICAC task forces or clique-driven vigilantes focus almost exclusively on the idea of minors luring adults to request sex from them, even though this scenario is largely fabricated. The title of today's episode is Entrapment Nation, the myth of the minor luring adults online. So let's start with the imaginary minors seeking adults for sex. Let's start with the basics. In many sting operations, law enforcement claims they presented a minor to an adult online. But this wasn't just any minor. And let's not forget also that in many of these cases, and most of them, they first presented themselves as an adult before they morphed into a minor. And like I said, it's not just any minor they're presenting. This is a minor who is actively seeking sex from random adult strangers they can find online.
The government deliberately keeps the focus off that fact. Instead, they frame it as if the man knowingly contacted a minor with the intent of sexually exploiting them.
But think about it. If you were running a sting operation to protect minors from sexual abuse, from sexual predators online, and you truly believed that there are minors who go online and they lure adults online to request sex from those strangers, would you try to find those real minors on those websites? How would you even do that safely and legally? Could you just go around asking every user on those websites if they are underage?
And if your operation only focuses on minors who are actively seeking adults for sex, then what about the minors online who aren't? Those are the kids we actually should be protecting. Why create an artificial scenario where adults are entrapped by a decoy?
And here's the kicker. According to these sting operations, there are minors online who are actively seeking out adults for sex. And these minors, they will apparently just announce to any stranger that they're underage. So why not just go around asking users if they're a minor? Based on the logic they use, minors will identify themselves to any stranger. So why not just ask the users? And if it's a minor, they'll just tell you.
Yeah, and can you imagine a real 14 or 13-year-old doing that? It doesn't add up. The whole premise assumes minors will broadcast their age with sexual intent to strangers when common sense and child development tell us they won't.
Now let's talk about the adult level minor.
Now that brings us to the next point. These decoys are often presented as sexually confident and experienced, basically acting like adults.
And they are clearly individuals who are familiar with using the online platform that they are on. So if you have an imaginary minor acting with the same sexual maturity as an adult, is it reasonable for someone to believe that they're a minor? Or is it more reasonable to be confused or skeptical?
So defense attorneys can ask, is it reasonable to believe someone's age just because they say it online? If the behavior doesn't match a minor's development level, is it reasonable to ignore that? Is it reasonable to want to confirm and identify instead of just accept the claim?
And remember, let's go over the facts again. This is a website that is used by consensual adults to seek consensual sexual partners. The minor presents themselves as someone who clearly knows that this is what this website is for, and they clearly present themselves as someone who is seeking a sexual partner for sexual exploration. So is it reasonable that when they then claim to be underage and they say something like, I'm 14, I hope you're okay with that, is it reasonable to just believe it because they said it? These are the questions that the lawyers are not asking during these trials, or many of them don't even make it to trial because the men are they're basically threatened to, be given a harsher sentence if they go to trial, and so they just take a plea deal. But these are the important questions that need to be asked to the court, to the juries.
Yeah, attorneys should challenge the prosecution with questions like, was the belief that this was a minor based on the adult's observation or just what they were told? If the adult played along with the narrative the decoy presented, does that prove they believed that they were talking to a minor? And can intent to have sex with a minor truly be proven if the person was only interacting online, had never met them in person, and therefore had no way of knowing their actual age or identity?
Right. The key is the adult's own observations. If the behavior matches that of an adult looking for sexual partners and not a child, then responding to that behavior doesn't mean that the adult intended to exploit a minor. It means that he was playing along with the script that in the narrative that the other person presented. Let's talk about the legal and the logical gap. So the law protects minors precisely because they lack the maturity of adults. But these sting operations present minors as adult-like in sexual confidence, creating a disconnect between reality and the scenario.
And that gap raises fundamental questions. Why do law enforcement operations continue to focus on nearly non existent cases of minors seeking adults while ignoring real cases where minors may be at risk but aren't actively seeking adults?
And why aren't defense attorneys asking these questions? Because if they did, they could show that the he believed it was a minor argument falls apart under scrutiny.
Well, these sting operations often create a fantasy scenario, not a real child protection case. They assume minors are actively luring adults, a scenario that rarely exists outside of law enforcement scripts.
I've never heard of a real case of that. Have you, Em?
No, I have not.
Yeah, and all the cases I've heard about, the minors were online doing regular things that children do, playing video games, chatting with friends, and things like that. I've never heard of an actual minor that went online on one of these adult hookup sites to, lure adult men and engage them in a sexual conversation and then invite them to meet for sex.
Well, the real
Um,
scenario I'm familiar with is, the minors playing Minecraft or maybe having a Facebook and sharing things with their friends and family where a stranger approaches them and starts grooming. So there's no direct, quick,
no,
hey, do you want to have sex? It's all groomed. It's over days and months. Sometimes it takes us, months and months before the stranger actually gets physically with the minor.
yes, exactly. And in these sting operations, there is no grooming. Um, an adult grooming a minor. If anything, it's the pretend minor. It's the adult behind the character of the pretend minor that's grooming the man to get the man to play along with them, to engage him in a sexual conversation and to say that he agrees to sex with them and to get him to meet them, because the only way the decoy agrees to meet them is if the man agrees to sex with them. Um, and that's not realistic for a minor to do. A real minor is not going to demand a sexual conversation from a random stranger online, and they're not going to be inviting a random stranger online for sexual exploration. That's just not realistic. If a real minor wanted to sexually explore, they're going to do it with somebody familiar to them, someone around them, someone they feel comfortable with. They don't want to do this with strangers. They're not there yet. They're not at the same sexual development as an adult. So it's nonsense for them to claim that this could have been a real child. And that's why it's important to point out in these cases, which is being greatly missed, that the adult's observations, the man's observations, they contradict the decoy's claims. And so what makes more sense, to believe what you are told, or to believe what you are shown, to believe what you see? The prosecution can't prove intent if you put the focus in the right places. He was told this was a minor, but he was also shown that this was not a minor. He was shown the behavior of an adult who was familiar with using this adult hookup site to find consensual sexual partners. And without evidence that the adult knew or should have known that they were acting with the minor, there's no crime. And there is no he should have known, because what he knew was that this person was not acting like a minor and that they were acting like a consensual adult.
Yeah, defense attorneys need to question, how does the prosecution story match reality? When it doesn't, it's entrapment. You're looking at an entrapment, not protection.
That's right. It's not child protection at all. Again, because it's just not realistic. If there has ever been a case of, children soliciting random adult strangers online for sex, it's a really rare case. And if you have ever seen that or heard of any, we would love to hear about it. You can write into us at stingingback@gmail.com, and you can tell us all about it. We have been looking for at least one case like that. And I'm talking about a minor who was just looking for sexual exploration. They were not trying to make money to buy nice things they wanted to have or to feed their families. I know that exists. I'm not sure they identify themselves as minors online, while looking for this, but they are certainly not out there just looking for sexual partners, with adults or sex from adults, just for fun or for sexual exploration, like these adult decoys are presenting minors to be in their sting operations. And so that is it for this episode of Stinging Back. Remember, questioning assumptions and observing reality are crucial to understanding what's actually happening in online sting operations.
Now, we'll be back with more investigations into entrapment, misconduct, and the real stories behind these operations. Stay informed, stay vigilant, and as always, keep stinging back.